Welcome to Old Money, a show dedicated to helping you build the trust fund you wish you were born with. Ladies who lunch, listen up. Life is not about looking rich. I want you to build a life and a legacy that feels rich in every sense of the word. If you're ready to stack cash, talk shop, and trade insider secrets, you're in the right place. These are the new rules to Old Money, so let's get after it. Hello, rich girls. Welcome back to Old Money, the podcast that helps you build the trust fund you wish you were born with. I am your host, Amber Frankusen, and welcome to today's show. I'm so excited about how the new year has started. First of all, I've gotten so much feedback from so many of you that you loved the first episode that I dropped this year. It was called High Value Handbook, 15 Habits of Wealthy Women. And I haven't gotten that many DMs on an episode in a while. I'm so excited that resonated with you because I think one of the things that I want to make sure that we keep focusing on here at Old Money is that being old money, and that's tongue in cheek, of course, but acting as and being a wealthy woman and, advancing in our lives as these women that we aspire to be, it's about more than what you have in your bank account. It's who you are at your core, how you show up in the world, and all of the habits that go along with that. So this episode, let's call it the sister episode of the High Value Handbook. But this episode is exploring all of the new status symbols of the ultra wealthy. So if you were thinking, I won't be wealthy until I have my Bugatti or my private jet or my AP watch, I might have some news for you today. We have, I think, 6 different status symbols to explore that are totally different than what you might expect. And speaking of getting feedback, I wanted to shout out some of the amazing rich girls who have taken it upon themselves to rate and review Old Money on Apple Podcasts. I haven't been soliciting for reviews or doing anything, but recently I've gotten a couple that have just really touched my heart. So I wanted to shout out a couple people. I don't know how to read your screen names here on Instagram, but one of them is MGRVMO, one is Kirsten Owings, one is Melissa Boast, another one JM Jacob, and Demdem33. Those are some of the most recent ones. And you guys, these just make my whole day. I also heard from Rich Girl Shauna recently via a DM, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for encouraging me and giving me the feedback that you're enjoying the show. This is truly a passion project, and I'll be super honest with you. In times where life gets hard or things are so busy, like I'm in such a busy season right now. My team is exploding with growth. We have so many new people that are joining our team at AF Marketing. I am hiring for more roles. We have an incredible amount of new clients that are coming onto our roster, which is inspiring, exciting, and also incredibly intimidating for just the workload that we have. Not to mention all of the personal things that I have going on this year. I've been busy. And so I'm always thinking of Old Money in the back of my head and jotting down notes for episode ideas and wanting to talk about different things. But at the end of the day, I'm like, when am I going to have the time to do this? It sometimes becomes a bit of a crunch. And I'm committed to showing up, not just for you, but for myself, for us, for every week of bringing us something that is high vibe that we want to listen to. Because quite frankly, I'm running out of podcasts that I'm resonating with recently. I don't know. I've just evolved differently recently. And I don't want to listen to my own podcast. I need more podcasts like Old Money. So if any of you have any recommendations for podcasts that I should also be listening to that are kind of in the same flavor, maybe not so serious, a little bit of fun, a little bit of pop culture, please send me a DM. I am looking to expand my horizons. So thank you to everybody who has rated and reviewed the podcast. And also I want to give a special shout out to my girlies in Cash Consciousness, the third reason why this year has started so well. We have an incredible group of women in Cash Consciousness, and this is the program that I've been developing over the last 4 months since we did Cash Consciousness in September of 2024. And it's all about rewiring how we work with money, how we relate to money, how we understand money, and giving the tactical advice on how to set up the system of your money so that it flows through your life, through your bank accounts, and does all the things automatically. I think a lot of us come into the new year with new goals. It's like new year, new me, and I want to do all these new habits. And we have 15 more things that we've added to our checklist that we have to do per day. And then the first day that we get bad cramps or have a long day at work or don't get a lot of sleep, we can't do the 15 things on our checklist and we beat ourselves up for it. And so cash consciousness is not just about how are we going to rewire the way we think about money. It's how are we going to get present with what's happening, take control of our money, like the CEOs that we are of our lives, and make it work in a system so that your money works for you and you're not working for your money. So cash consciousness, we just launched it and started last week. If you're listening to this, the week the episode drops. And already, even I'm having these like massive breakthroughs about ways I want to upgrade my own money system. But I'm just so happy that we have a core group of women that are dedicated to improving their financial standing in 2025. So I want to cheer all of you on. I'm loving being in there. This is offered in a private section of the Old Money Country Club. Call it like the speakeasy, the VIP section, whatever you want to call it. But we have a group of women in there. We're going through the modules. If you are interested in still joining, you absolutely can. Just go to oldmoneypodcast.com/cash and you can figure out the details there. But I just am so grateful to be in community with these women, and it's going to be a really great year. However, before we get into today's topic, I have something quick for you, just a little birdie and bogey. If you don't play golf, it's okay, and neither do I, but just to remind you, a birdie is a score in golf when you get one stroke under par. That is good, but a bogey is one stroke over par, which is not great. We are helping prime you for the country club with a little vocabulary so you look good on the link. So in this segment, I'll let you know who or what got my birdie of the week and what missed the mark and got a bogey. So my birdie of this week is a big technological upgrade in my life. And it sounds so simple and silly, but the reality is part of my wealthy life is having things be frictionless. Like if my Wi-Fi is out, you never caught me being more upset. I'm throwing my computer off the balcony. I get so frustrated. For me, a wealthy life is when everything works absolutely seamlessly, perfectly. It's all set up just the way I want it. It's dialed. Like just to analogize it, I like my life to live like I was waking up in the morning at the time that suited me perfectly, that I was optimized for my sleep. And as I opened my eyes to take in the morning rays, my blinds and curtains automatically parted. And it did this without me even having to say a word. And then my cappuccino was made and it shows up on my side table. It's like that type of frictionless life is what I'm after. I love when things are seamless. And something that I touch 1,000 times a day was driving me crazy, and it was my phone. My phone was just at the end of its rope. The camera wasn't working anymore. I don't know if you noticed, but every time I was taking a video or a selfie video, and that's the reason why I haven't been showing up on social, because my camera is broken and it would do like half light situations. Anyway, I upgraded to this Max Pro 16 situation. The phone is way too big. It doesn't fit in my pockets. I can't even get my fingers across it to like change things when I'm using it. It's very annoying. But the good news is this is my birdie actually. Having that hard reset took me on a journey to hard reset everything technologically speaking in my life. So not only did I get a new phone, I upgraded everything within my phone, got rid of old apps, cleaned it out. It's organized perfectly now. You guys are going to kill me for this. I even switched my playlist on my music service from Spotify over to Apple. I know that's very controversial because Spotify is like what all the Gen Z are using, but the interface was too messy for me. I could never find what I wanted. So I switched over to Apple Music. I found an app that let me transfer all my playlists. I'm very excited about that. But I also cleaned out my computer. I did a full digital clean out day. I got everything off of my desktop. I cleaned out all of my files. I organized everything. I'm going from Notion to my regular notes in my notes app because it works a lot better. I've gotten rid of Evernote. I've done a full clean out of all of my files for my life, for my business, and the way that I know where everything is digitally in my life, it makes me feel so much peace. I cannot even tell you. It's like somebody cleaned out my entire house and then labeled where every battery is and stored and where every shoe is that I would ever possibly need. It just has given me so much clarity around my digital space. And I think that's something that we overlook because you can just close the laptop, throw the phone, but your digital space is so important to maintain. I keep all of my records. We're going to get into this in cash consciousness too, but the way that I stay organized with things, even like the car maintenance, right? You're probably like, when's the last time I got my oil changed? Who knows? Or when did I get my tires on? I have a note. It used to be in Evernote. Then it was in Notion. Now it's just in my regular notes app on my phone so that it's easier. And I have a note where I record all of that stuff. And so if somebody asks me what my VIN number is, I just go there and copy and paste it. Or if somebody needs to know my EIN for my work, I know exactly where that is, where before I'd be rifling through papers for hours trying to just find that number. So this new phone has ushered in a new era. And the other thing that it's ushered in is because I can't really use it well because it's too damn big for my fingers, I deleted TikTok. And this goes into my bogey, which is the chaos of the year so far with social media. I mean, granted, there's been a lot of chaos in the world for the beginning of this year, but in the case of social media, and maybe I'm sensitive to this because one of the services my agency offers are social media services, but my goodness, could these so-called tech geniuses be more clueless and more out of touch with who their user base actually is? Tell me why TikTok decides to change the way that our feeds look, change the way that our highlights look, change the way that we interact with the algorithm. As a business owner myself, and I know a lot of you out there are business owners, it's like the things that you're changing, Instagram, are not improving our user experience at all. They're only making it more frictionful. It has been such a pain in the butt to keep up with all of the changes that actually have no bearing on how much I want to use the system. It actually makes me want to use it less. And they're wondering why everybody flocked over to TikTok. And speaking of TikTok, this showmanship, this posturing, this nonsense of we're going to ban it, we're locking you out, we're putting a little note up there. Like, it's like going to the dry cleaner and you get a note on the door that says, sorry, we're closed, we'll be back in 10 minutes. That's literally what this last week was like. And now it's back. And I'm not going to say I told you so, but for all of my clients out there that were so worried about TikTok going away, I told you it wasn't going away. I knew it was going to stick around. I didn't ever have a worry about that at all. I did suspect it would be gone for a period of time. I didn't think it was going to be 12 hours. That was a joke. And I know this is my bogey because I'm complaining about the social media landscape, but here's really the birdie. Again, I had to ask myself and get super honest. Is TikTok improving my life? Do I want to be swept up in all of this chaos? And the answer was no. And so I deleted it from my phone, and we'll see how long that lasts. I'm hoping that it lasts me. I am looking for a replacement hobby at this moment, maybe something that we talk about in this episode, but TikTok is gone off my phone. I am no longer participating in that forum for the time being. Anyway, let's get into today's episode topic. We are talking all about status symbols. What is a status symbol? We talked a little bit about this in Cash Consciousness as we went through the different spending profiles. There are, according to me, 6 different spending profiles that I came up with, different things that I've heard from women that I've talked to through this process of ways that they spend money where they're unconscious. There's an emotional spender, there's a convenience spender, all these different types of profiles, and we go through them to identify what spending profile you are so that you can create new systems that better support your financial goals instead of falling into old habits. And one of the spending profiles that I've identified is an ego or identity shopper. And I think that has a really negative connotation, but I want to scratch that negative connotation right out of your brain right away. This is not a criticism of the way that anybody spends money, and I'm going to tell you why. And part of this exercise is neutralizing all of our habits so we stop blaming ourselves for the ways that we've spent money in the past and just make new decisions moving forward. Like if I sat here and beat myself up for all of the hours that I spent on TikTok in the last year, I would never move forward and start doing other things. All of my energy would be wasted lamenting about all the time that I spent. And it wasn't wasted, by the way, because in the moment, it gave me what I needed, which was entertainment or comfort or distraction or whatever it is. So as you're looking to change your spending habits or your spending profile, and if you're looking back and saying, oh gosh, I really was a convenience spender, I've wasted so much money on Uber Eats and DoorDash and all the things. My job is to help you bypass even wasting a breath on feeling bad about what happened and focus on what's to come and how you're going to move forward. That's what we're doing here, is neutralizing it. And so when I talk about an ego or identity shopper, that is a spending profile where the person is buying things or experiences to signal to others or to signal to themselves how they view themselves or how they want to be viewed. So that's really where status symbols come in. It's a lot of that ego and identity shopping. Not so much, again, ego as a bad thing. It's about, evolutionarily speaking, We are programmed to find acceptance in tribe, in community with other people. And part of that is showing where you fall within that tribe. And that is done as a safety and protection mechanism. So just to take it back to our lizard brain, if we think about status within tribal hierarchy from an evolutionary perspective, in early tribal societies, being part of the group was crucial to survive, to just get enough food and shelter. If you were an outcast in a group, then you were out on the fringes and you are not part of the tribe that was going to get the resources that you needed in order to survive. However, if you have some sort of social signal, like a status symbol to show others, like wealth, power, or skill, that impresses the rest of the group, you're demonstrating your value to the rest of the group, and you're going to secure a favorable position within that tribe, which means you're probably going to get better access to resources like food, shelter, love, a partner, etc. So when we judge people for, buying a red sports car, men in their 50s, why are they doing it? I mean, maybe they are a little douchey, or maybe they're just trying to secure themselves their next mate that's going to help them in their social hierarchy. So yes, there's a lot of ways we could apply judgment to the way that people act, especially with social signals. But when you take it back down to this tribal-based, like evolutionary-based thinking or framework, for me, I kind of think of it like when you look at an adult and you see childhood trauma in them, you're like, oh, your inner child's like being such a little brat right now. I literally now think of these status symbols as like, I don't want to call it a psychological defect, but it's almost like cute of like, oh, you're just trying to find your way with the tribe. And symbols are also a way to communicate with others, like culturally where you fit in the larger schema of things, right? Like when we think back into tribal groups, that's like a group of 150 people. And that's all the people that you knew in your whole life back in the day, right? Now we have 150 million people that follow, Kim Kardashian on Instagram. Don't quote me on that. But the point is now she is creating her own group and she's trying to find the other 150 people that can fit in that group with her. And what we see, especially on social media, is because there's signaling that's out there about what it takes to be at the top of the dog pile in these new groups, is that a lot of people are trying to emulate or match up to what they're seeing signaled on social media in ways that are not healthy for them. To keep up with their peers or to get tribal acceptance, what we're seeing a lot of now on social media is a degradation of these status symbols because people are signaling with things that are fake. And that could be anything from a fake Walmart Birkin, or it could be putting everything on a credit card and you really can't afford it. If you are living that way, are you going to be accepted into Kim Kardashian's social circle of just 150 people? No, of course not. You're not getting an invitation to Kris Jenner's Christmas Eve party, which I don't even know if they do anymore. But you might be getting something else, which is validation or admiration, or even more dangerous, identity formation. Because there's a lot of people out there that are using their belongings and their things, their experiences, their photos on Instagram to show others who they are. Their status symbols reflect their identity to the world, which reinforces their self-concept. And their self-concept is usually inflated. Stereotypes exist for a reason, right? And it's why we make fun of these, 55-year-old men going through a midlife crisis, getting that sports car so that he can get attention, because it shows fragile self-worth. Over-reliance on these status symbols for validation is going to actually probably make a very insecure person. If you need to signal to others your worth, you probably don't feel very worthy inside. And what I'm seeing in culture and the changes that I'm observing from a social perspective, from a cultural perspective, is this new era of status symbols, right? Like, this is my hobby. I inspect what is going on with wealthy people, with old money, with new money, how people are acting from like a sociological basis. And what I'm starting to observe is that people are becoming very attuned to those with an inauthentic presence, like the Anna Delveys of the world. Everybody looks at that show and that documentary and is like, how could you possibly be scammed by this scammer? Like, my gosh, she's so flimsy and transparent. And I think we all as a community have gotten so much better at identifying those people that are overemphasizing these status symbols, that are really looking to compete with others and communicating their value through their social media images, through the fake Birkins that they have, through all the things that we're used to. And I think especially the younger generation is so attuned to what is real and what's fake. And we can watch it and be entertained with it without being affected by it, right? Like, let's talk about the drama that happened over Christmas with the Darnell sisters. If you're not familiar with the Darnell sisters on TikTok, they're two girls that grew up in the Midwest, and the older sister blew up on TikTok while she was rushing for her sorority in Alabama during Bama Rush, I think 2 years ago. She was the one with the tagline. And by the way, this is a brilliant marketing move to have a tagline. Her tagline was, "Hope you're having a great day, not just a good day." And she blew up with that. And she also blew up because she was wearing designer pieces to every single event in her sorority rush. She was wearing Gucci skirts and Louis Vuitton shoes and all this Cartier jewelry. And everybody was like, wow, she must be from such a wealthy family. Well, over Christmas 2024, her and her sister went absolutely viral for their Christmas hauls. I've talked about this before. When the girls get on Christmas Day and they say, "I'm not bragging. I want everybody to know that I'm so grateful for everything that I got. And so here's everything that I got." And they show all their Christmas gifts to the camera and post it on TikTok. And the little sister specifically, her haul was outrageous. I mean, it was Chanel this, Louis Vuitton that, Minnie Kelly in pink. I don't think so, sister. Anyone who has even a slight interest in the fashion world could recognize right away that she was showing a bunch of fakes. And not only that, but some internet sleuths went on to DHgate, which is the Chinese website where you can get all sort of replicas and fake designer pieces. They found everything that she showed on her page and the listing for it on DHgate. And the thing that really tipped me off right away is she was showing some shoes from Louis Vuitton that were clearly like the wrong season or what wouldn't be in style right now. And it was like a denim shoe with a denim bag. And I was like, that's definitely in the cruise collection or something that's not available right now during Christmas, because you can't buy this stuff in store all year round. And what happens is that these counterfeiters, they will counterfeit something that was a limited edition run. And then all of a sudden, all these people have this limited edition piece. I don't think so. It's an easy tell that that is a knockoff or a counterfeit piece. So of course, the internet is up in arms about how insulting it is that they're trying to pass off all of these fakes as real Christmas presents. And then they came out and the mom said, "Oh, we bought it from the real." The real said, "No, they didn't." And then the girls came out and said, "I thought we understood that some things were fake." But when we reel it all back to how it all started with the Darnell sisters on TikTok, she got attention. I forget what her name is. Kylan. She got attention when she was doing Bama Rush for all of her insanely expensive outfits, which, referencing back now, it looks like their mom was just buying stuff on DHgate for them from the beginning. But it actually helped her secure her position at the top of the food chain within that ecosystem of Alabama sorority sisters because of the way that she signaled socially. And now I think we're starting to get fatigued. Typical status symbols that we are used to are things like private jets, but even private aviation or semi-private aviation is becoming much more accessible to high net worth people through services like JSX. Or maybe you would see somebody with a fancy watch like an AP Royal Oak or a Rolex. Well, we know that those counterfeits are running wild. You might see people with designer bags and clothes that used to be status symbols. And now we know that you can get a faux Birkin on Walmart, and even more so, the houses, the vacations, all of the things. We know that over leveraging your family and being in massive debt is not as uncommon as we think it is. And I read a story on here last year, I think it was, of a blogger that I used to follow, Mama and Tata, whose husband very sadly unalived himself because he was so deep in debt and couldn't see a way out. So I believe that typical status symbols are going out of style more quickly than ever. Now, this is something that typically old money families never really liked in the first place. That's why you hear of things like quiet luxury or stealth wealth, because truly wealthy people are not needing to signal to you that they're wealthy. They know they're wealthy and they don't care if you think one way or the other about them. But I'm going to call it like the mid-tier, not the old money families, but new money, this is going out of style even more quickly than I anticipated. And these status symbols are losing value because of people overextending into credit, because of knockoffs, counterfeits. They're just too easy to get a hold of something that makes it look like you fit in, but you don't really anymore. And also, there's no more scarcity. Part of the exclusivity of a status symbol was that it was hard to get. And it's not even hard, relatively speaking, to get a Birkin these days. Everybody who is a fashion girly gets their hands on a Birkin or a Kelly. There is not real scarcity in that market anymore. Even worse than that, we saw, if you know me from the early 2000s, you know I always carried a Louis Vuitton Neverfull. For like 10 years, that was my bag before it got completely ubiquitous. And then Louis Vuitton re-released the Neverfull this year to a bunch of influencers, and we were told that it was going to be coming back. It's the it bag. We've all been waiting for this. And yet I have not seen one influencer on social media carry a Neverfull since they got that bag for free and did the unboxing. It's just too available. And even though it's the new Neverfull, the amount of knockoffs that are in the market and the amount of people that have it doesn't make it special anymore. It doesn't signal to others that you're ahead of the trends. So these status symbols are losing their weight because they don't actually effectuate these end goals of status in your tribe and social signaling and hierarchy and cultural context. It just really doesn't mean anything anymore. These new status symbols that I've identified are actually a little bit more insidious. No, that's not right. They're not bad, but they're definitely a little bit more underground or less obvious because they're not typically objects anymore. And this whole idea came to me, actually, I hate to credit back to the thing that I said I just quit, but it came from a TikTok where I was learning about the way that they threw parties in the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age was like late 1800s, early 1900s, like before the Victorian era. If you've watched the shows, you probably know what I'm talking about more than I do, but I haven't watched the shows. But in the Gilded area, they would throw parties that did not start until like midnight, and they would throw absolute ragers. Now, this era, the Gilded era, Gilded Age, whatever, it was coined that because everything was glittery and gold because all these families were coming into so much money because of like the railroads and steel and banking, finance. All these things were happening all at once in America. So all of a sudden you have these super wealthy families that immediately had huge amounts of wealth. And I'm talking like massive generational wealth. We're talking about the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, all of these big magnate families, right? Well, let's say you're a daughter of the Carnegies. Do you think you have to get up and go to work every single day? Absolutely not. You are living a life of privilege where you do not have any obligations at all. And therefore, these parties that would start at like midnight, they would go all night long. They would go until the dawn. And the reason that these families in the Gilded Age had these parties all night long is because they wanted to start the parties late so that the new money people who had to wake up and go to work in the morning would have to leave early. They would all leave around 2 or 3 in the morning because they would have to try to get some sleep before they had to go to work in the next morning because they were new money. One of the typical definitions of old money versus new money is, did you inherit your wealth and do you have to work? Or with new money, you are still building your wealth. Or if you stop working, you lose it. You have to continue to go to work every day. So this was a social signaling thing. If you were able to stay at the party until dawn, well, then you were in the in crowd. You were truly old money. And if you had to leave to go to work the next day, that was a signal that you were new money and you were not worthy of being within this tribe of old money families. So it's not as obvious as what bag did you show up with at the Gilded Age party to show that you're within the group, right? This was a little bit sneakier. And that's how I think these cultural trends are shifting. The new status symbols are much more abstract and much more about how you live your life versus what you have in it. Okay, the first new status symbol that I've identified, first we have to look at what the old status symbol was. To paint the picture, the old status symbol was 100% what you saw in the movie Wolf of Wall Street. It was having a trophy wife. A trophy wife is not just somebody who looks good on your arm. The status symbol of a trophy wife was, I make so much money as a man that my wife doesn't have to work. She can fill her days with tennis lessons and parties and philanthropy and all of those things. And the reason that I believe this status symbol is changing so rapidly is because finally the women are taking down patriarchy, and we are realizing that women are as capable, if not more capable than men, to be incredibly, incredibly successful. The new status symbol is partnering with a woman of worth. I'm talking about George and Amal Clooney. I'm talking about Taylor and Travis, for goodness sakes. I'm even talking about how people are over Pookie and Jet, because everybody's now investigating Pookie's body language and her husband and being like, is she okay? Like, blink twice if you need help. Because that's over. Having just the wife that doesn't work or doesn't do anything. Even Pookie now is trying to get into business by having a hat line, because the status symbol has shifted from I do nothing except be at home and eat bonbons and watch my soap operas to be a woman of worth. I need to contribute meaningfully to our household, to our business, et cetera. Now, you can argue she's doing that 1000% with the social media presence. And I think that's kind of where the lines get blurred there. But when I really think about like an Amal and George Clooney, when he was a bachelor for his entire life and known to be that, and he only quote unquote settled when he found the woman that was beyond his wisdom and success and impact in the world by tenfold, right? I mean, he has the ultimate success signal in the legacy that he's created with his children and Amal in their family. Or when we look at Taylor and Travis, for example, they both are equally so successful, but in their own venues, right? Do you think Taylor's ever going to not work? No, she's an artist. She's always going to work. She's always going to tour. She's always going to do the most. And Travis is part of an absolute dynasty in football right now. He is at the peak of his career. And that's why people are so magnetized to them. It's hard to hate them, regardless of how you feel about either one of these people, because they're both just so successful and doing so well. It's about partnering with not just a woman of worth, but a person of worth. And the paradigm has shifted from the man has to be the breadwinner or the caretaker to what can we do together, or can it be the woman? I think this is a huge dismantling of the way that things always used to be. Women couldn't have very high-powered, successful jobs in the 70s and the 80s and even in the 90s. So of course, it was more common for the man to be the breadwinner and the woman to be the trophy. And furthering not just the career aspect of it all, but women don't want to just be viewed as trophies. Granted, there's a lot of days where I'm working and I'm so exhausted and I'm like, wow, I would love to just not work today. But I would never want to be viewed as just a trophy. And I think I could say that for a lot of my friends who are also probably screaming, being like, I don't want to work anymore. I totally get you. I hear you. I'm there with you sometimes. But we don't want to stay home and do housework all day long. We want to be contributing. We want to be viewed as great mothers, great wives, great friends, great members of the community, people that are making an impact. We want to be seen as valuable and funny and witty and charismatic and great hostesses and all of the things. Yes, of course. But I don't want to just be a trophy on a man's arm where he makes all the jokes and he gets all the laughs. Not on my watch, baby. So I definitely think that the new status symbol is having a woman of worth in your corner, somebody who's going to advance the agenda of the family and her own life and her partner's life without having to be foaming at the mouth from taking too many Quaaludes in 1966. So the second status symbol that I have identified is even more recent of a cultural shift. Now, what I mean by more recent of a cultural shift actually dovetails perfectly into this idea of we can be more than trophy wives, right? Because the pendulum swung so flippin' hard with women where we were, not able to get into the corporate offices or into the boardrooms. And then we were, so we worked so hard to get there and prove our point. But it's almost like women had to work so exceptionally hard to get there, which we thank you for your hard work, women of the past who paved the way for us. But it was this kind of girl boss era, this corporate era of I'm going to work as hard as a man. I'm going to be as dedicated as a man. I'm going to do everything a man can do, but better. You remember that song? Anything you can do, I can do better. But it went too far the other way. And it created these handcuffs, especially for women, of being tied to the office, to work, to your career, to whatever. I actually heard this on TikTok recently when they were, another thing that I'm referencing back to TikTok as I'm telling us all to delete it. We'll see if my own TikTok ban on my phone sticks around. Anyway, the context of this was talking about the resistance to return to office, which I completely understand. My company is fully remote with in-person meetings a few times a month, but the resistance to doing that is because this is actually a new idea that we have to be in the office 9 to 5 when we get to a certain level of success. The thing that this TikTok was talking about was back in the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, the Don Drapers of them all, there wasn't such cut and dry work hours. You worked all the time. The people that you socialized with the weekends, that was work. So that also meant you could go golfing at Tuesday at 10. You had a little bit more flexibility because you were still effectuating the goals, you were still getting things done, but there wasn't an expectation that you had to be in the office all the time as a senior executive. And now with this connectivity that we have Slack messages on our phone, emails on our phone, we can't really ever escape it. And then also we're being asked to be in the office 5 days a week. It feels like after we did this for COVID, we saw the other side and we saw how much we valued flexibility. Now, my personal philosophy on this is there's a lot of jobs that do need to be in the office. In fact, a lot of creative work does need to be done together. And that's something that I'm still struggling with in my own agency, is finding that happy medium of how we're going to figure out how to do the best work together as a team while being remote. That's why we have in-person meetings so often. But when we look at the way that people want to live, people don't want to be treated like kids anymore. They want flexibility. And I'm talking about going to Pilates on Tuesday, but working when you want to work, when your energy level can best handle it, or even expanding on this outside of work, the flexibility to make the choices that suit you and your family best. Before, the status symbol was send your kids to the best school, put them in piano lessons, violin lessons, make sure they have a private tennis tutor. And now it's like the flexibility of how free can I let my kids be? We've discovered that through programs like Montessori or Forest School, these are becoming the new status symbols because it's all about letting your kids explore and be free and not have structure, and then find value in structures they create themselves versus following other people's rules, like being in a desk all day long when your nature as a 5-year-old boy is to go stomp in puddles. So it's more about this return to how do we actually have sustainable lifestyles where we work, where we learn, where we explore. And as opposed to just putting your kid in a desk all day long, can I send them to Forest School and get them a private tutor? Can I homeschool them and offer them more experiences that are hands-on? All of these things about flexibility are now the new status symbols. So the families who are able to put their kids in alternative education programs, the partners who are able to take vacation and travel the world and do whatever they want, or go to Pilates on a Tuesday morning, those are the new status symbols. Having autonomy over your life to a certain extent is the way that we are showing that we are successful. And I think that's one of the reasons why all of these online entrepreneurs, and I travel around the world and work from wherever, why that was so enticing to some of us. But again, the pendulum swung too far, and then we had COVID, and now we're kind of back in the middle of trying to find the new way to be. And so when you have flexibility in your schedule, or you own your schedule, you are 100% embodying the new status symbol of today. The next status symbol that I see that is so interesting is one of the reasons why Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is so bad this season. A quick diversion, it's literally unwatchable. There is nothing compelling about this show at all. I love that Dorit is finding her voice and is so grumpy. But this show is about a bunch of women that we've been watching for year after year after year. And I'm sorry if you want to argue with me about this, but the main character on the show, Kyle, she has lost the plot. She has completely lost the plot, and she is trying to keep all of these secrets and be private when that is not what we want from her on this show. It is the new status symbol is privacy. And it's one of the reasons why the show sucks, because if you want to have privacy, you cannot be on a television show these are two concepts that are like diametrically opposed. Like, be private or be on a TV show, but don't try to be private on a TV show. Do you know what I'm saying? That's why, if you haven't watched it, Salt Lake City is literally the best franchise. I just binged it all this year. I had never watched it before. And was I sleeping on something that was so great? It is so hysterical because they're literally like, they tell you everything. They show you everything. It is a complete mess. But the status symbol of privacy is also the reason why they can't attract any new people onto Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, because people are now understanding that the new status symbol is privacy. There's this trope where people have often talked about you can be as wealthy as you want in the world, but if you have that bug, that itch to be famous, you will never be satisfied and you will likely waste all of your money trying to be famous. And I don't want to cut them down because they've just been through hell. I know they're doing better and I'm so happy to support them. But this is Heidi and Spencer Pratt, 100%, right? They did not want privacy. They wanted all of their stuff on display. They wanted to be famous. They craved fame so badly. But now people are really turning back into privacy in a very real way. And you might say it's because of this uprising against CEOs, like the United Healthcare CEO. You might say that it's just a response to the overexposure of everything on social media and reality television. But it's also just about, again, the flexibility, going back to number 2, the normalcy. And that's why people say New York is so much better than Los Angeles for celebrity sightings, because you might just see Sarah Jessica Parker walking her kids to school and everybody ignores her. She's able to have a semblance of privacy, even being one of the most recognizable actresses in our country. Do you know what I'm saying? The other ways that I see people really expressing this privacy is not posting on social media as much. We are in the post-Instagram era, and one of the reasons people are not posting as much is because, number 1, safety. I've actually had a client who posted while she was out of town, posting live on Instagram stories while she was out of town with her family. And while she was gone, just in Los Angeles, her home was robbed. And that's happening a lot more. People are not posting photos of their kids' faces on social so that their kids can have privacy and have a semblance of a normal life, whether they're a public figure or a celebrity or whatever it might be. And also this overexposure, again, we talk about status symbols. A wealthy person, a truly wealthy person, doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, because as we talk about in Cash Consciousness, there are many layers to wealth. You have not just monetary wealth, you have time wealth, relationship wealth, purpose wealth, all of these other measures of wealth, including self-worth. So you don't need to signal to other people what you're doing, where you've been, or where you've gone. Now that is sacred. And privacy for me is the status symbol that I value the most, of keeping things close to my chest until I'm ready or willing to share with others. I don't share very much with many people in my life until it's all over, so that I can really savor that and make it very special with the core people that I truly do care about. I almost feel like if you're broadcasting everything that you're doing all of the time, it's kind of like that saying, if everything's special, then nothing's special. And now, if there are some things that I can hold special and hold dear to myself and share with just a close circle of friends, to me, it feels so much more intimate. And I also love when there's a little bit of mystery with a person. Like, what have you been up to? Versus, oh, yeah. I know that you've been drinking every day that you said you're doing dry January. I can see it on your Instagram stories, babe. Things like that. So I really believe that privacy is one of the most important trending new status symbols of today. Now, this episode will drop on January 20th of 2025. That's important because this next status symbol is something that we saw in action on January 20th of 2025, a pretty historic day. No matter what you think about the politics, it was the day of the inauguration of Donald Trump to be the 47th president of the United States. And what we saw at this inauguration event, and what we've seen over the past 2 months since he's been elected, is the exercise of this new status symbol. The old status symbol used to be power and control. The new status symbol is influence and access from behind the scenes. Again, dovetailing perfectly with number 3, privacy. Privacy is so important, especially to people who have massive amounts of wealth. But the change in this is that Instead of looking to be the figurehead or at the top of the food chain, many people who have achieved success, especially in one of the sectors I'm going to talk about, have opted to stop being the forward-facing CEO or president or leader of the pack. They are now looking to be almost retired from the public eye, behind the scenes, but able to pull the puppet strings. So for our non-US listeners, if you haven't been watching what's been going on in politics in our country, hello, shalom, welcome. One of the things that has been really interesting is that there's been a ton of people who have really kind of changed tact on their political leanings and really gone to back the Make America Great Again campaign that's been put on by Donald Trump. Now, you might say this is just very clear and transparent ways to buy their way into the cabinet or buy favor from the president and his cabinet to advance policies that they believe in. But I think what's more interesting about this all is that we're seeing a couple of different types of people pop up with massive amounts of influence that really did skew the results of this election. And the first one that I think about is Joe Rogan. Now, Joe Rogan went independent with his podcast back when he started in 2011. It all started as a joke. I started listening in 2011 because my boyfriend at the time listened to him and was an MMA fighter, and so was always watching Joe Rogan. I used to hate Joe Rogan. Now I'm kind of ambivalent towards Joe Rogan. But what we see here is not somebody who is traditionally very popular by way of they're in the traditional media. This is an unconventional approach that he's taken, right? He's alternative media. And yet he had one of the biggest influences, I think, on this election by far. Or if we look at all of the people that have shown up from the tech world that used to be CEOs of these major companies, like David Sachs, for example, who's now our czar of AI, these people have been really interested in influencing not just the outcome of the election, but the outcome of the policies. And they're doing so from, I would say, behind the scenes, so to speak. Now, one of the things about this inauguration is that we're seeing a lot more, I would say, business people that are becoming interested in politics, becoming incentivized by being interested in politics for the benefit of their own company, whether good or bad. But the drive used to be the drive for power. And the drive, I think, always used to be, I want to be the guy at the top. And now I think that we look at people in positions of power like Donald Trump, like Joe Biden, I'm talking about every side of the aisle here, as people that are like a little bit off. We're all saying, did you see how aged Obama was after he got out of office? Why do you want that role? Okay, Nancy Pelosi, you've been in the Senate for 500 years. Why are you still there? We're starting to, as a society, really look at people who strive for power in a traditional sense with a little bit of a side eye. And I think we're starting to say maybe the people that are out for power or want to be the head of the role, they're a little kooky, they're a little off, they're a little, and I can't relate because it would be the last thing that I would want because it's the equivalent of being on the Real Housewives of the United States of America. And who would want that? You are just setting yourself up to be ridiculed, harassed, criticized, bullied, regardless whether you're Joe Biden or you're Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or JD Vance or whatever it might be. It is just a position that looks so unattractive to so many of us that we're like, no, thank you. We rather sit at home, be with our families, be private, yet we still want influence and we still want access. The influence that we want might be not at the political level, but in our community. It might be on our Instagram pages. We still see so many people sharing what it is they're using, whether they're an influencer or not, whether they're being monetized or not, because they want to be helpful and show value to their tribe. Look at me, I have some good advice for you. Or maybe you want to be influential in your homeowners association to make sure that people are mowing their lawns and keeping their homes correct, right? Like there's ways that you can still have influence. And there's also ways that people are still craving access because it's access to these people, places, and things where you can advance yourself or your career or your status without being on display, as Melissa Gorga would say. It's about, instead of all vying for the same spot and being competitive, the trend that I see is about doing what you do so well and being the best in your field. I'm talking about all of these tech people who are the best in their field. I'm talking about Joe Rogan having the most influential podcast. I'm talking about these leaders or these people who are so good at what they do. They do it so well. And maybe what they do is so niche, and maybe what they do is so private that they then get access to being part of these circles that they never were before. And that's a more interesting way to be influential instead of being so visible. I think visibility is over. Okay, the next status symbol that I think is very interesting is more again of a pendulum swing away from, I think, some bad habits we've started as a country. And I'm not saying this wasn't a status symbol before. I just think there's more of an emphasis on it now. And this status symbol is IRL hobbies. IRL means in real life. I'm talking about hobbies or interests that have an actual impact on a person that's not just building a business, being on your phone, being addicted to your phone. I mean, we know people have always had hobbies, but they've really been around, I think, in the world of wealth. Again, more status symbols, maybe like collecting art or cars or wine or traveling or whatever. You're still showing people what you have and what you've done. But the thing that I think is more of the status symbol now are hobbies that produce more for the community, for the public, that create community or create some sort of, I don't want to say philanthropic, but create some sort of benefit for humanity as a whole. Let me give you an example. Space travel. That is the new hobby of billionaires. Elon, Jeff, Lauren Sanchez, they're all into space travel. And you can say it's an ego thing, but they're trying to market it as we're doing this for the sake of exploration. We're doing it to better humanity, et cetera, et cetera. Or even buying a sports team. Buying a sports team creates community. You're now doing something, whether it's an F1 team or an NFL team, you're doing something where you're in real life, you're creating community, you're doing something for the public, or not doing something for, but you're investing in something that has public benefit in a way. And another one I think is really interesting is this pursuit of wellness, right? Not just like you get a cold plunge in a sauna, but I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to do the research like Brian Johnson and swap plasma with my son and my father and see how that helps advance the study of anti-aging. It's something that gives back to the community. It creates community and it has a bigger ripple effect. It's this consciousness level hobby. It's not just about going to the polo matches. It's about starting a foundation that saves horses that have been abused after the racetrack. I don't know. I'm making this up. My point is that I think that this consumption era, I think this addicted to your phone and business era, I think that's all over. I really do believe that the new hobbies or the new ways that we're really admiring people as opposed to being annoyed by them, because we don't want to see one more Birkin collection, right? We don't want to see Morgan Stewart sitting in front of her Birkin collection as she talks about how sad it was that everybody lost all of their belongings in the LA fire. It's totally tone deaf. What we're starting to appreciate and admire ultra wealthy people for are these hobbies that give back to the collective, that create community, that have a positive ripple effect beyond just consumption or beyond just personal interest. Everything now has to have a bigger message. It's one of the most redeeming qualities about Bethany Frankel. I don't go through Be Strong anymore, but I continue to donate to Global Empowerment Mission. This is like the fourth time I've talked about it on the podcast. It is my number one go-to for any disaster relief. But the fact that Bethany has started Be Strong and has had such a concerted effort into those efforts, it's like allows her to be so obnoxious on TikTok because she's doing something for the collective. Like we can count on Bethany to make sure she's taking care of the people of North Carolina 4 months later after the tragedy. Do you know what I'm saying? So these IRL hobbies are not just about being off your phone in real life. It's about what about your hobby is impacting the collective at large, because we're not impressed anymore by all these guys from Qatar or whatever that get on a flight, a Qantas Airlines flight with all their falcons so they can go falconing. We're like, that's a gross display of wealth. Nice hobby, but like, who cares? So I really think the tenor of society at large has been, okay, billionaire, if you have a hobby that somehow or some way impacts me, I'm down for it. Okay. And then kind of going off this last comment I had about Bethany Frankel and be strong and all the things, this last status symbol is kind of dark. I'm going to be very honest about that, but it's something that I really do believe is a status symbol in today's day and age. And there's no way that I can put a nice bow on this, but this actual true status symbol of the ultra wealthy is somebody who can be unaffected by disaster. This was so apparent during the LA fires, and it's one of the reasons why Mark Zuckerberg is building a bunker in Maui or wherever he's building it. We are now seeing the realities of the world, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to end on a bummer note, but I just wanted to get through it quickly. We're seeing the realities of the world. It's crazy out there. And if you are ultra wealthy, you don't just have a safe room and a go bag. You have multiple options and flexibility, again, back to that flexibility status symbol, to take care of yourself and your family no matter what happens to you. And we see this, like I said, in the case of emergency, like the LA fires, of how much of a privilege it is to be able to evacuate and go somewhere else where you're safe, to go to a second home, to go to a friend or family member's home, to be able to be safe somewhere else, meaning you don't have all of your eggs in one basket. And this is also with this whole TikTok ban. My gosh, so many content creators were fearful for their careers because they built their entire community on one platform. I have said this since I founded my agency in 2018, but if you are only building a following on a social media platform, you are building a business on rented land that could be taken away from you at any time. And if you were freaked out about the TikTok ban, I'm sure that caused you so much grief and stress and worry about how you were going to sustain your business. But if you had a very sustainable business, the TikTok ban wouldn't affect you at all. Instagram could shut down tomorrow and you would still be okay. So it's one of those things where we look at being wealthy and being able to pivot and being able to take care of yourself, whether it's COVID, whether it's a fire, a hurricane, a flood, or a social media platform go away, or the stock market tanking. Do you have a nervous system that can withstand, think critically, and pivot in times of need? And do you have resources to take care of yourself? And I launched Cash Consciousness and started the program right in the midst of the LA fires. And for me, it felt, I questioned it a little bit because it made me feel like, wow, we're talking about building wealth and living well while people are losing it all. And I had a moment of hesitation around it. But I had to think about it a little bit more. And what really came through for me was not only is it my privilege to build my wealth, it's my responsibility to continue to build my wealth. It's my responsibility to continue to learn how to regulate not just my financial nervous system, but my parasympathetic nervous system so that I don't become a trauma junkie and dive into this. Because when I lower my vibration and get into a state of sadness, hopelessness all of the time because of the things that are going on in the world, I am not bringing the best version of myself to my friends and family members, to the people in my life that were affected by those fires, to my team, to my business, to my clients. It's my duty to continue to pursue not just wealth, but the person I'm becoming as I'm trying to improve my life, improve my business, so that I can be somebody who gives back regularly, who donates money and energy regularly when something like this happens, who can have a safe home or a respite for somebody to come to when they need it, so that I can be of caring mind and heart and soul when somebody needs to unload on me and I can carry that burden for them or support them. And it really got me thinking, it is our responsibility, especially as women, to continue to pursue wealth so that we have the resources to take care of ourselves when anything happens, because it's the amount of stress that happens on your body, on your heart, on your nervous system when something terrible happens. That's what takes years off your life. That's why Obama looked so old. And so whether we can be strategic, whether we're prepared for a disaster, whether we've discussed a plan, whether we have some resources stashed away for a rainy day, that is what this whole practice is about, so that no matter what happens, we can take care of ourselves. It's very easy to forget about the hard times when you're in the good times. But if we are prepared, we can weather those storms no matter what. So the last status symbol is getting your nervous system in a place to where you can handle whatever life throws at you, whether it's illness, personal loss, a fire, a disaster, a politician, whatever it is, you can handle it no matter what. That is the definition of being wealthy. So I leave you today, and I will talk to you soon on the next one. I'd love to know what you think of these new status symbols and any that I missed. Make sure you send me an email at oldmoneypodcast@gmail.com or send me a DM or a little bit of love on Instagram at oldmoneypodcast. Love you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Feeling rich? I hope so. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Old Money. If you have questions you want answered, email me at oldmoneypodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on social. We are at Old Money Podcast, and I am at your service. If this episode spoke to you, inspired you, helped you, if you took a single note, it would mean the world to me if you could please just take a minute to rate and review the podcast. And if you're not doing so already, subscribe. And if you have friends who like getting rich, please share this episode with them, even if it's just on your Instagram story. And I'd love you more than Jeff Bezos loves Amazon Prime. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you on the next episode. Remember, I'm not your lawyer, I'm not your tax professional, and I'm not your financial advisor. The content presented in this podcast is intended to entertain, educate, inspire, and support listeners in their personal and professional development and does not constitute business, financial, or legal advice. In addition to that, this episode may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products and services.